History is often told as a sequence of events neatly arranged and easy to understand. Empires rise, armies march, rulers make decisions, and borders change. But this version of history hides something essential. It hides the fact that behind every empire, behind every campaign, and behind every collapse, there is always a human being. And human beings are not rational machines. They are driven by pride, fear, confidence, and ambition. Again and again, history proves that when ambition grows faster than restraint, even the strongest states can be dragged toward disaster by the will of a single individual. Ambition is not evil by itself. In fact, ambition is often what creates empires in the first place. It pushes rulers to reform institutions, modernize armies, and challenge outdated systems. But ambition becomes dangerous when it stops responding to reality. When success convinces a leader that limits no longer exist. When victory after victory creates the illusion that the future is already decided. This is the moment when ambition transforms from a force of progress into a mechanism of destruction. At the beginning of the 18th century, Sweden stood as a perfect example of this process. It was not a massive empire by population or wealth, but it was one of the most efficient military states in Europe. Its army was disciplined, aggressive, and experienced. Swedish officers were trained to act decisively, and soldiers were conditioned to endure extreme hardship. For decades, this system worked. Sweden won wars that it had no right to win. Its enemies learned to fear its speed and precision. And at the center of this military machine stood King Charles XII. Charles ascended the throne at a young age, and many European rulers believed that Sweden's moment of weakness had arrived. They expected hesitation. They expected political paralysis. Instead, they encountered something far more dangerous. Charles was fearless, aggressive, and completely convinced of his own destiny. From his first campaigns, he demonstrated an ability to act faster than his enemies could react. He launched attacks that ignored conventional caution. He personally led charges. He refused to retreat. And again, his enemies collapsed under the shock of his confidence. Every victory reinforced the same belief inside Charles' mind. That hesitation was weakness. That compromise was unnecessary. That peace was merely a pause between battles. Diplomacy, to him, was not an alternative to war, but an admission of doubt. When peace offers appeared, he dismissed them. Why negotiate when victory seemed inevitable? Why stop when the system had never failed him before? What Charles failed to understand was that Sweden itself had limits. Its population was small. Its economy was fragile. Its manpower pool was finite. Every soldier lost was not easily replaced. Every campaign strained resources further. As long as wars were short and decisive, Sweden could survive. But ambition does not think in terms of sustainability. It thinks in terms of momentum. As Charles pushed his armies farther from home, the structure supporting them began to crack. Supply lines stretched across hostile territory. Horses died from exhaustion and hunger. Food shortages became routine. Soldiers marched for weeks without proper equipment. Disease spread silently through camps. These were not dramatic defeats. They were slow, invisible losses that ambition refused to acknowledge. Eventually, Charles turned his gaze eastward. The campaign against Russia was not simply risky. It was fundamentally detached from reality. Distance alone posed a threat that no battlefield courage could overcome. The environment was hostile. The infrastructure was non-existent. The enemy refused to fight on Charles' terms. Russian forces retreated, drawing the Swedish army deeper into territory that could not sustain it. Every step forward increased vulnerability. By the time a decisive confrontation finally occurred, the Swedish army was already broken. Hunger, disease, exhaustion, and isolation had done what enemy weapons could not. The defeat was catastrophic, not because Sweden lacked bravery, but because ambition had blinded its leadership to the basic mathematics of war. In a single campaign, Sweden lost its army, its influence, and its position as a great power. Charles survived, but his empire did not. His personal ambition had exceeded his nation's capacity to sustain it. France followed a different path toward the same danger, slower and less dramatic, but no less destructive. Under Louis XIV, France became the cultural and political center of Europe. Louis was intelligent, charismatic, and deeply aware of the image he projected. He believed that authority required grandeur, and that grandeur required constant demonstration of power. War, to him, was not merely a defensive necessity. It was a performance. Campaign after campaign followed, sometimes justified by strategic necessity, often driven by prestige. France frequently emerged victorious, and that success masked the accumulating cost. Armies drained the treasury year after year. Taxes increased steadily. The burden fell not on the nobility, but on peasants and urban workers. Entire regions lived in a permanent state of economic pressure, but ambition does not feel pressure from below. It feels only affirmation from above. By the end of Louis' reign, France appeared powerful on the surface. Its borders were secure. Its court was magnificent. Its influence was unmatched. But beneath this image, resentment and inequality had reached dangerous levels. Louis' ambition did not destroy France immediately. Instead, it hollowed it out, leaving a fragile structure that would later collapse under forces he could no longer control. Spain offers another example of how ambition, when driven by a sense of personal destiny, can quietly dismantle even the most powerful empire. Under Philip II, Spain controlled territories across Europe, the Americas, and Asia. On paper, it was the most dominant empire the world had ever seen. To Philip, this was not merely power. It was a sacred obligation. He believed himself chosen to defend faith, monarchy, and order on a global scale. Every conflict, every campaign, every sacrifice was justified in his mind as necessary for a higher purpose. The problem was not a lack of resources. It was the illusion of infinite capacity. Philip fought wars in the Netherlands to suppress rebellion. He confronted England on the seas. He challenged the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean. He attempted to control global trade routes while maintaining dominance on land. Each conflict made sense in isolation. Together, they formed an impossible burden. Silver flowed into Spain from the New World in vast quantities, but it flowed out just as quickly. War consumed wealth faster than ships could deliver it. Inflation and weakened the economy. Domestic industry collapsed under the pressure of imported riches and constant taxation. Philip refused to scale back. To retreat from any front felt like moral failure. To compromise felt like betrayal of duty. As revolts spread and finances collapsed, Spain declared bankruptcy multiple times. Its armies remained large, but less effective. Its influence remained visible, but increasingly hollow. Spain did not fall overnight. It slowly lost its ability to shape events. Ambition had stretched the empire beyond recovery, and no amount of faith or determination could change the mathematics of exhaustion. In contrast, history also offers examples where ambition nearly caused catastrophe, but was restrained just enough to avoid total collapse. Russia under Peter the Great stands at the edge of this line. Peter believed his country was dangerously backward. He saw Western Europe advancing technologically, militarily, and economically, while Russia lagged behind. His solution was radical transformation, imposed from above, without mercy. Institutions were dismantled. Traditions were ridiculed. Resistance was crushed. Thousands suffered under forced reforms, heavy taxation, and relentless labor demands. Russia came dangerously close to implosion. Entire segments of society were pushed to their limits. The cost of modernization was paid in human lives. But unlike other rulers driven purely by pride, Peter demonstrated a rare capacity to adapt. He adjusted his methods when systems failed. He compromised when survival was at stake. His ambition remained enormous, but it did not fully detach from reality. As a result, Russia emerged transformed rather than destroyed. The difference was not morality, it was restraint. These stories reveal a pattern that repeats across centuries. Ambition becomes catastrophic not because it seeks greatness, but because it rejects limits. The most dangerous rulers are not those who desire power, but those who become convinced that power itself has removed all constraints. They stop listening to advisors. They dismiss warning signs. They interpret resistance as ignorance rather than information. Every setback becomes proof that they must push harder, not reconsider. Empires rarely collapse because of a single bad decision. They collapse because ambition narrows perspective. Leaders begin to see the world only through the lens of their own will. Logistics become secondary. Economics become abstract. Human cost becomes acceptable. The system exists to serve the vision, not the other way around. At that point, even intelligence and competence become liabilities, because they are no longer grounded in reality. History does not punish ambition itself. It punishes blindness. It punishes the refusal to stop. It punishes leaders who mistake momentum for destiny and confidence for invincibility. Over and over, the same lesson emerges from different cultures, different centuries, and different ideologies. When one man's ambition becomes larger than the system supporting it, collapse is no longer a possibility. It is only a matter of time. In the end, the fall of empires is rarely inevitable. It is chosen chosen through escalation, chosen through denial, chosen through the belief that success must always continue. These decisions are not made by nations, they are made by individuals. And when those individuals confuse their personal vision with historical necessity, entire civilizations are forced to pay the price.